Smile, don't spread your leg. Ooh, I could do that, but no one knows me, no one ever will. If I don't say something, if I just lie still, would I be a monster, scare them all away? If I let them hear what I have to say, I can't keep quiet, no, no, I can't keep quiet, no, no, a one-woman riot, no, quiet for anyone. No, not anymore, 'cause no one knows me, no one ever will. If I don't say something, take that dry blue pill. They may see a monster, they may run away, but I have to do this. I can't keep quiet. No, 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 no. I can't keep quiet. No, no, no. I'm a one-woman riot. No, no, no. Oh, I can't keep quiet. There'll be someone who understands. Must be someone who understands. There'll be someone who understands. Oh, I can't keep quiet. I can't keep quiet. I can't keep quiet. No, 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 I won't keep quiet. Let's give one more big round of applause for Songrise. This is incredible. Let's just take a minute before we get started just to look around at how many people are here, brothers and sisters, allies. This is incredible. My name is Kaylee Hanson-Long. I'm here with NARAL Pro-Choice America. And we're here today for a very simple reason. We demand that our voices be heard. This whole process has been painful. And last night was a really clear example of what I'm talking about. Donald Trump took to the campaign stage on a national platform to ridicule, mock, dismiss, and reject a brave survivor of sexual assault who has put herself on the line for her country. It was such a despicable display and one so beneath the values of Americans across the country. And as we observed that moment, just as a country, what I've been thinking about is taking a moment right now to just give a big round of applause for Christine Blasey Ford and everything that she has gone through, for Deborah Ramirez, for Julie Swetnick. No one deserves what she has gone through and what other survivors have gone through in this process. And so the more we can stand together and be together in solidarity for these survivors, the better off this country is going to be. You know, Trump's hostility towards women is obvious. And the senators who stand with him, who continue to stand with him, even after last night, are complicit. And let's not forget all the subtle ways in which women are treated as less than equal every single day. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So while we're here to stand in solidarity with survivors, we're also here for another very important reason. We're here to be together because we know that together we can win this thing. We can. We know that the wind is at our back, and we are facing a moment where Americans are rejecting Brett Kavanaugh in larger numbers than ever before. And that's because of all of you. That's because of all of you who have not been just here tonight, but have been in the Senate. They have been in heart. You've been around the country. And speaking of around the country, this is one event, but there are over 200 similar events like this happening right now all across the country. 200 organized in less than 48 hours. Let's give each other a round of applause for that. We are facing a moment where Americans across the country are rejecting Brett Kavanaugh, and that's because of our efforts, our bravery, our outrage, and our mobilization. And we're here today to raise our voices to say no to Brett Kavanaugh sitting there for the rest of his life. No matter what, we will be heard. We'll be heard now, we'll be heard in November, and we will be heard beyond then. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the man who's occupied the national conversation over the last few weeks, and that's Brett Kavanaugh. It is no secret that Brett Kavanaugh is hostile to women. He has been accused of sexual assault by 3 women. He has lied under oath. People who sexually assault women and tell lie after lie after lie do not deserve to be a judge on any court, let alone the court right behind me. Kavanaugh was disqualified before these credible allegations by Dr. Blasey Ford, Deborah Ramirez, and Julie Swetnick. And let's be clear, the Republican Party is standing by Kavanaugh despite these credible, alarming, and disqualifying allegations because they know he's going to execute their brutal agenda for the rest of his life if he gets that seat. So let's get this program started. Let's hear from some really incredible speakers. I've talked enough. First, we're going to hear from the wonderful Rabbi Shira Stutman from 6 and I. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I want to begin by saying what a privilege it is to stand here with all of you and to feel the energy building and building and building for the change that we hope, God willing, will come. But here's the thing. I'm a rabbi, and so my job is not to tell you what policies we should be pushing for. My job is not even to tell you who should be sitting on the Supreme Court. My job is to talk about values, and specifically what values we should hold as Americans and as humans, and what values we should want for ourselves and our families and our peoples and our country. So I want to talk a little bit about the value of leadership in the Jewish tradition. So I'm specifically going to talk about Moses, who's arguably one of the most important leaders in the Jewish tradition and other faith traditions as well. There are 2 values that the Jewish tradition teaches that Moses held over the course of his life. You know what they were? The first one was the value of respect. Our tradition teaches that Moses had the respect not just of the Pharaoh, because anyone with enough money and privilege can get the respect of the Pharaoh. But Moses also had the respect of the average Egyptians, including the servants. What does it mean to have respect? It is to offer respect to people, to believe their stories, not to lie in front of the Senate or in front of the country. What it means is to not believe that you deserve anything or are entitled to anything, but to recognize that each of us has hard work to do, and it is only when we do it together, give respect, that we will actually gain respect. That was the first value that our great leader Moses held. You want to hear what the second one was? It'll surprise you. It was humility. Our tradition teaches that Moses was the most humble man who ever lived. What does it mean to be humble? It's to believe that you don't know everything. It's to believe that you don't have the right to legislate women's bodies even as you don't believe their stories. It's to believe that even as you have a lot to say, you have a lot to learn. So I'll close by saying this. Whoever sits on that bench in this extraordinary building that is behind us, I pray that it is someone who both has the respect, not just of the Pharaoh, because anyone who grew up in Pharaoh's palace, like Moses, can gain that respect, but the respect of the people, including the ones whose voices are not yet heard, and there are too many of those people in this country still. And I'll close with just one word for those people like myself, whose faith drives them forward, and who use their faith as a way to make their political decisions. If you really claim to be a person of faith, and you want to know who your leader should be, look to the person who is humble. Look to the person who respects everyone. Look to the person who does not lie and is not entitled and believes other people when they have difficult stories to tell. It's pretty easy. I think we can do it. Thank you, everyone.
I'm Elise Hogue. I'm the president of NARAL Pro-Choice America. And as such, I spend a lot of time, as we all do, in D.C., wondering which senator is where and how do we count them on endless votes. I am here to introduce someone who I never have to wonder where she will be. 3 months ago tonight, standing right here on the night that Judge Kavanaugh was nominated, she was standing here right with me, right with us, right with women, where she always is, fighting passionately, humble, serving the people. I give you Senator Kirsten Gillibrand from New York.
Well, thank you to Elise for her leadership, her vision, her determination to never, ever, ever give up. Thank you to all of you for being here, for speaking truth to power, for not giving an inch, for never giving up, for believing survivors, for standing together against Judge Kavanaugh. The last 2 weeks have been exceedingly painful for so many women. So many women cried during those hearings. So many women have been re-traumatized, reliving their own worst moments day after day in disbelief that our president and powerful men on the Senate Judiciary Committee did not believe Dr. Blasey Ford, and if they did, they didn't care. The fact that our president openly mocks a survivor, he's not just mocking her, he's mocking every survivor. He's mocking every woman. He does not value women. He does not believe women. He does not stand with women. But women will not be bullied, and we will not give up. We will not stand down. We will not stop fighting. Senate Republicans are trying with every fiber of their being to jam this through as fast as they can, as fast as humanly possible. The White House is trying to jam this through as fast as they can, as fast as humanly possible. Is the FBI doing the thorough investigation that was promised? No, it is not. They aren't doing the investigation that was promised. They aren't questioning all the witnesses who are coming forward. I have a constituent who has relevant information. I had to write a letter to the FBI saying, please, let her be heard. Let her be interviewed. Why aren't all the corroborating witnesses who are coming forward from Yale and through his life not being allowed to testify, not being allowed to offer their testimony? Why is the White House denying the ability of the FBI even to go back to Brett Kavanaugh and ask him about things that have come up in these subsequent interviews? How come he cannot go back to Dr. Blasey Ford to ask her more questions? So it's outrageous that they are not willing to get to the bottom of this. So the question I have for you, what are they afraid of? What are Republicans afraid of? What is President Trump afraid of? They're afraid of the truth. They're afraid of the truth. Dr. Blasey Ford was credible, incredibly credible. She told her truth to the whole world, reliving those most personal moments in front of the whole world. But she remembers a few things, especially the laughter, seared into her mind, into her brain, into her heart. And she told us about those moments and relived it. Judge Kavanaugh shouldn't be on the Supreme Court. And he shouldn't be on the Supreme Court for a lot of reasons. First of all, he shouldn't be on the Supreme Court because of his record and what he believes. He intends to take away women's reproductive freedoms, the basic right to decide about what's going to happen to your body when you're having children, how many children you're having, to make those fundamental decisions. He doesn't believe that health care is a right. He believes it's a privilege, because when having to choose between corporate's interests to charge you whatever they want because of your pre-existing condition, their free speech right, that insurance company's free speech right, is more important than yours and mine. Judge Kavanaugh shouldn't be on the Supreme Court because he has lied under oath. He has a pattern of lying over and over again in this hearing. If you just look, he's lied about his past. Every question that was asked about his past, he just told you his resume. Well, I got into Yale. I worked my butt off. He went on and on about how important he is and how important his resume is. But he wouldn't answer the questions about his drinking. He wouldn't answer the questions about college. He wouldn't answer the questions that senators asked him over and over again. He wouldn't answer the questions about his high school yearbook. He wouldn't actually give you honest definitions. He wouldn't answer the questions. And when he had the opportunity to be truthful, he would attack the senators asking the question. When Senator Amy Klobuchar says, did you ever drink to blacking out, where you couldn't remember all or part of what happened before, he attacks her and asks her, what about you, Senator? When Senator Dianne Feinstein asks her questions, he speaks over her. He attacks her. Judge Kavanaugh should not be on the Supreme Court because of this temperament. Because he came to that hearing angry. He came with a partisan screed, blaming a conspiracy theory in the Clintons. You know exactly what his worldview is now. He did not have the demeanor or disposition that we expect from a Supreme Court justice. We expect honorable people who care about the truth, who are trustworthy, who have the character and the content of character to do what's right, regardless of partisanship, regardless of politics. He is not that person. So what do we do now? What do we do as Americans in this moment, at this time? We raise our voices. We speak out. We carry signs. Stop Kavanaugh. I believe survivors. No on Kavanaugh. Me too. We believe Christine Blasey Ford. Our lives are on the line. This is how we feel. This is why this moment means so much to us. Tell your senators. Call every single one. Tell them why this nomination is so personal to you. Why you stand with Dr. Blasey Ford. Why you believe her. Why this moment is so important to this country. It's really about who we are as a country and what we're going to have for our children and our grandchildren. So do not give up in this moment. Do not grow weary. Do not back down. Be heard. Keep speaking out. Speak that truth to power. I will stand with you. I will stand with survivors. I will not give up, and I will speak out. Keep fighting.
You know, every time we focus on the words of Donald Trump or the words of Lindsey Graham, we need to spend twice as much time focusing on the words of great leaders like Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. because that's how change happens. Kaylee already told you this is one of over 200 events around the country, and let me tell you something that I know for a fact. If it wasn't for each one of us, Judge Kavanaugh would have been sitting in that building when the session opened on Monday, and he is not. He is not there. They told us not to fight because his confirmation was inevitable. But we believed in our truth, and we believe in our power, and we believe that power grows when we stand in a community of truth. We were here the night he was nominated because we know Brett Kavanaugh, and we know another 17-year-old, a 17-year-old who goes by the name Jane Doe, who he held against her will and against the wishes, or he would have held, against her own wishes, against the law in my home state of Texas to prevent her from accessing an abortion, despite that she had gone through all the hoops, despite that that was her desire for her body, her life. That 17-year-old has become emblematic of a fight against a man and an ideology where denying women agency over our own destiny goes hand in hand with seeing us as things that you can do what you please with. It is an old ideology, it is a dying ideology, but it is not an ideology that will go quietly into the night. People ask me every day, why? Why are they hanging on to this guy? He's obviously so damaged. Why wouldn't they just jettison him for someone who's not so controversial that they could get through? The answer is because they are clinging to that ideology, that power, that control that keeps women down, keeps people of color down, keeps anyone who doesn't have the elite influence and means down, but we are stronger than they are. We have been fighting. Every time they told us this was a done deal, go home, we doubled down and our numbers grew and our stories grew and our truth has grown more powerful. I know that I represent one of hundreds of organizations that have been pouring their heart and their lifeblood into this fight. And I just have to say, as a privileged leader of this organization, that our energy, our truth, our power comes from our 2 million members who have been fighting every day in their cities and towns across the country. We listen to them, we hear their stories, we channel their stories, and we are blessed by our members. And we have 2 of them here today to speak to you. So I'm here to introduce Steph Black and Thea Bryan. Please come to the stage.
A few things before I begin. One is a reminder that this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Donate to your local shelters. 2, I want to thank our interpreters for making this event accessible. And 3, I ask that you just take a moment to look at the people around you. These are holy faces in a holy space doing holy work. My name is Steph Black, and I'm standing in front of you today as a 22-year-old, as a feminist, and as a Jew. It is for all of these reasons and more that I cannot sit idly by while Kavanaugh creeps closer and closer to nomination and confirmation. I have been protesting Kavanaugh since he was announced as 45's nominee on July 9th. It was here, also standing behind Elise, that during that press conference, chaos reigned. It hasn't gotten better. As a Jew, I am called to stand against injustice. I call upon my faith to do that justice and to take a stand. It is because of that call that on September 4th, I was arrested in an act of civil disobedience along with 70 other activists in the Senate hearing room on the first day of Kavanaugh's confirmation hearing.
was the scariest thing I've ever done willingly. I watched as they dragged some of my heroes and fellow activists away, as they put their bodies on the line to defend women's rights across the country. And as I prepared to stand, I thought about Kavanaugh repealing Roe v. Wade. And I thought about how that was actually a violation of my religious freedom. Jewish law explicitly commands us to choose abortion when the life of the mother is in danger physically or mentally. We are called upon to choose life, to choose the life of the mother, to choose the life of the mother. So I stood in a room of some of the most powerful people in the free world who would choose in a heartbeat to take away that right from me. And I yelled at them. Terrified that my voice would crack, I stood in a crowded room and I yelled. I told them that confirming Kavanaugh would be confirming a lifetime of taking away the right for me to choose my life. I yelled, "Vote no," as they dragged me out of the room. And then I said the Shechianu. It is the prayer you say the first time you do something that Jewish calendar year. And that day too was chaos. And it hasn't gotten much better. The morning of Christine Ford's testimony on September 27th, I went into work at my synagogue. I worked with some incredible women. Together, we said a prayer for Christine Ford, and we listened together to her power, to her grace, to her integrity, as she was being grilled by the same men that I was arrested in front of. I wept. So did thousands of women. In its own way, that day too was chaos. Kavanaugh is chaos, and we cannot let that chaos reign supreme. So I'd like to read you that prayer, written by Tamara Cohen. I said that morning at my congregation. I read that prayer multiple times throughout the day, cried each time, and it brought me a little bit of peace. So I hope that you will enjoy it with me as I read it. Dear God, who opened Hagar's eyes to the desert well. Dear God, who was with Hannah as she cried out to her heart to the priest Eli, deafened by his position, authority, and judgment. Be with Christine Blasey Ford today as she opens her lips to share the painful truths in a seat of patriarchal power. May those who seek her harm be stilled. May those who quake with their own memories find support and comfort. May those who go to parties tonight and any night, seeking joy, acceptance, release, adventure, never be pinned down, ridiculed, forced to yield the basic freedom of their body's autonomy, to their soul's intactness, to their future's possibilities. And may those who seek to limit the freedom of women in the name of their own freedom or in the name of their faith come to see that the way to protect the sanctity of life is right before them every day. In the workplace, in their families, on the streets, and in their schools. Because each chance to treat a human being as a human being is an opportunity to honor the sanctity of life. Amen. Thank you.
Well, this isn't scary at all. Like millions of other Americans this past week, after hearing Dr. Ford's detailed account of her sexual assault, memories of my own sexual assault came flooding back. It was palpable and painful as we remembered every little detail that was indelible in our hippocampus, to quote Dr. Ford. Some memories are vague, while others are as detailed as the day it happened. My own rape was no exception. However, my situation is somewhat different in that I did report my rape. There is irrefutable evidence that it occurred, and everything that happened to me is detailed in some dusty police report in the Memphis Police Department archives. In 1988, at the age of 19, I was violently raped by a coworker in a hotel he tricked me into going into. In that room, he forced himself on me. I fought, I screamed, I begged. I did report it, and he did go to jail. As someone who can prove without a shadow of a doubt that I was raped, I'm going to tell you what I do and don't remember about that night. What I don't remember, his name. Crazy, right? I haven't been able to recall his name in many years. I don't remember what the name of the hotel I was raped in was or where it was located. I have only a vague recollection of what he looked like. His face was not burned into my brain. I don't remember the car we were in. What I do remember, that I wore a mini skirt from a place called Units that I bought at the Mall of Memphis, where the bed was in that room, where the door was in that room, what I was screaming. I remember handing over my teal underwear to the nurse and being told I didn't have to, but it could be used for evidence. If I didn't have irrefutable evidence in some dusty police archive in Memphis, Tennessee, people would tell me there was no way I was raped. Who doesn't remember their rapist's name? Well, I don't, and I was raped. This effort to discredit women because of what they do and do not remember of their sexual assault is nothing short of vile. Women need to be believed. Women all over the country should not be forced to relive pain in order to disqualify Kavanaugh, who has lied repeatedly throughout this process. As we have relived our own stories of rape and sexual assault, the GOP has clung to the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh. Their actions have told women that we do not matter. I stand with Christine Blasey Ford, and for the record, I prefer wine. Thank you.
We're so honored by these stories. It's going to be a very, very powerful evening. Another hero of this fight who's gone the extra mile to stand with us, to stand for justice. Senator Jeff Merkley from Oregon filed a lawsuit to prevent this vote from moving forward when the GOP was saying that they would proceed. I'm proud to introduce a champion of justice, a champion of women, and my friend, Senator Jeff Merkley.
How about another thank you for the courageous words of Thea Ryan, who came forward to share her thoughts. Following that day, that hearing, women from across Oregon were calling my office. They were calling my office to share their stories and to say, stand with Dr. Ford, stand with the women of the United States of America who've been assaulted and attacked for time eternal, and it has to end. Are we going to put onto the Supreme Court an individual who has demonstrated a pattern of arrogant and aggressive behavior to women? Are we going to put an individual on the court after hearing the sincere, the authentic, the honest presentation of the experiences by Dr. Ford? I can tell you I am so deeply disturbed by the moment we are in. It is more than one can imagine. There has been so many layers of obstruction for the Senate to do its job. Let's start with the fact that the president intervened to prevent 3 years of his record as staff secretary from ever getting to the Senate. Do we want those records? Yes! And then let's proceed to the fact that he blocked 100,000 documents with a stamp of presidential privilege without justifying a single one of those stamps. Do we want those documents? Yes! And then his agent stamped 140,000 documents, committee confidential, so that the public of the United States couldn't see them. Do we want to see them? Yes! And who knows what all is in there about his opinions, about his conduct that is relevant. What are the Republicans hiding? The truth, the full truth, and nothing but the truth. We have a separation of powers in our country. The president is supposed to nominate, and the Senate is supposed to review the entire record to determine if the person is fit or unfit. That's the standard that Alexander Hamilton laid out, why the Constitution is constructed in this way. That means the Senate can't intervene in how the president nominates, and the president's not supposed to not be able to intervene in the way the Senate reviews his record. So how about this? No vote until the Senate has a full chance to review his record. And when there is a vote, let's take into account every aspect of what we know. And even without those 240,000 records I just mentioned, even without those, we know he lied to the committee. He lied to the committee about when he knew the New Yorker article information. He lied about the statements and the meaning of the words that he put into his yearbook. He lied earlier in his previous confirmation in 2006 about whether he had an involvement in the issue of torture when he was on the White House Council. He lied in 2006 about whether it received stolen documents stolen from the Senate Democrats. Isn't there some shred of defense of the institutions of this country that 100 senators should vote against a man who has lied to the U.S. Senate from ever serving in this building, this United States Justice? Those words up there, equal justice under the law. Can we get equal justice from this individual, Kavanaugh? No! And we saw his intense partisanship before the committee. We saw his intense anger. He said to us, what comes around goes around. He threatened the Senate of the United States of America. Let's stand together in partnership, blue and red, Democrat and Republican, East Coast, West Coast, North and South, and stop the travesty of this individual ever serving on that court.
Thank you so much, Senator Merkley. That was fantastic. Now I have the great honor of introducing our next speaker, someone who is fighting for the rights of the LGBTQ community every single day. Give it up for Sarah Warbelow of HRC.
Thank you so much. On behalf of the Human Rights Campaign and our 3 million members and supporters nationwide, I'm proud to stand here with you tonight. Over the last 3 months, Judge Kavanaugh has been exposed as a serious, irreversible threat to our nation, to women, to LGBTQ people, to access to health care. But last week, he was exposed as having a hairpin trigger and an allergy to the facts. This makes him unfit to serve on our nation's highest court. I stand here with you tonight to say we believe survivors. With nothing to gain, Dr. Blasey Ford stepped forward to protect America from a man who seeks to shape our judicial system for decades to come. Let me be clear. There is no justice for survivors if Kavanaugh serves on the Supreme Court. Some senators think that this is just business as usual. It cannot be. It must not be. We must continue to make our voices heard at every turn. We must call. We must show up. And regardless of the outcome of this decision, we must vote. The legacy for survivors cannot and must not be business as usual. We must take this moment and harness this legacy into fundamental change for our country. Thank you so much for having me here tonight.
Next, we have a woman. We have so many leaders among us, but we have a woman who has leader in the title and who has been fighting for women since the first day she put our name on a ballot to run for office many years ago. It's my supreme honor to introduce Leader Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. For being here as patriots who support the Constitution of the United States as we stand on the steps of the Supreme Court. In the events that had that have transpired in the last few weeks, the Republicans in the United States Senate had the responsibility not to be cowardly patriarchal people who would hide from interviewing a beautiful, lovely, well-spoken, humble witness, but to hide from that. But they can't hide from the truth. And the truth is this. We have to take a deep breath and see this in its full perspective. On the one hand, the Republican leadership in the United States Senate had a responsibility to respect the integrity of the Supreme Court. Yes. Yes. On the other hand, they had a responsibility to respect the concern, the allegation presented by Dr. Blasey Ford. Yes. How they proceeded accomplished neither of those goals. Our founders, in their wisdom, had in the Constitution of the United States separation of powers of three co-equal branches of government, each with its responsibility. The president could appoint, the first branch is the legislative branch, Article 1, with very big responsibilities. The second branch, executive branch, which the founders gave the responsibility, the privilege to name the third branch, the judiciary, with the advice and consent of the United States Senate. This is a constitutional responsibility that they had to make sure that whoever went to the court was a person of integrity and who honored his oath of office to uphold the Constitution of the United States. So this isn't about politics or anything else. Who wins the election makes his appointments. We don't like some of the point of view of some people who are going to the court, but if they are true to the Constitution of the United States, then there's some level of respect. But if we cannot even respect their integrity, their commitment to fact and truth when they testify, that's a problem, regardless of other challenges that they face. Lying to the Congress, who has the constitutional responsibility to confirm or not. And then when they complain, these same patriarchal cowards, when they complain about having to have an investigation. It's nothing more than any of you would have if you were appointed to any federal position. They vet the nominee, but they want to hide this nominee from even the appropriate vetting required. The only person who doesn't have to be vetted is the President of the United States. And it's pretty clear that he could not withstand a vetting. And he talks about being in love with Kim Jong-un and thinking Kavanaugh is a great guy, upstanding, this or that. I guess there's a similarity that people have with the people that they respect. Crazy about Putin, in love with Kim Jong-un, thinks Kavanaugh is a great, upstanding person. Well, you know what? He doesn't even know what he's talking about. So I come to you with sharing the concerns that we have about truth being the order of the day, dignity of the court, something that we all withhold, respect for Dr. Blasey Ford, for her courage, for speaking out for herself and also for others who have suffered similar allegations. So you would think that the Republican majority in the Senate would honor their constitutional responsibility to confirm or deny and have proper vetting so they know what they're voting on. Instead, they've taken a very divisive path in our country, a very divisive path. They want to undo the Me Too movement, and we're not going to let them do that. We're not going to let them do that. But as we fight this fight, we have to show our respect for the Constitution, for the court, for Dr. Blasey, and for all women who speak out. I think the benefit of the doubt should go to the women. The default of truth is to the woman, but that doesn't mean we don't believe in due process. We believe in due process. That is our strength. So if Judge Kavanaugh believes he has nothing to hide, he should not fear an FBI investigation. He should not fear. So it's really important that you all hear in solidarity with Dr. Blasey Ford. Could anything have made you more proudful, more tearful, more grateful than to her for her courage, her dignity, her speaking out in such a beautiful way? This is a moment in history. We keep saying that over and over. This is a moment in history. It can serve to bring the country together to say we respect women and men who may have allegations they want to share. But to do so with the placing a value on truth and not saying, well, you can have your investigation, but I'm going to vote the way I'm going to vote anyway. How disrespectful to our founders, how disrespectful to this court, how disrespectful to all women and men who come forth with courage to put forth their truth. So let us all advance our truths in this. Let us all advance our truths in this, and let us do so in a way that by the end of this week, hopefully, we'll have a decision that will honor the role that the courts play in our country. We do not want to discredit the court by having any decision made that is based on anything other than the truth. So I thank you for your patriotism, for your courage not demonstrated by the Republican leadership in the Senate Judiciary Committee. You have courage, they have cowardice. They have cowardice. Let us see them respond to the truth. Thank you all. Thank you all so much. Kavanaugh, Kavanaugh, Kavanaugh. Thank you all.
Wow, thank you so much, ma'am. That was fantastic. Next up, we have the incredible, wonderful, a co-sponsoring organization, MoveOn.org's Corinne Jean-Pierre.
I love you too. Thank you so much for all of you for being here today. Because here's the thing. We wouldn't be here on October 3rd, still fighting to stop Kavanaugh if it wasn't for all of you. Civilian duty indeed. Because you guys knew and understood that everything was at stake. Everything that we've been fighting for decades was at stake. You knew that Kavanaugh was not fit to be in this building. You knew that Kavanaugh did not have the temperament to be in this building. You knew that Kavanaugh and the pattern of lying that he has was not fit to be in this building. That's right. But my friends, we all here today to say that the fight continues, as you all know. We have to continue to stand up, speak up, make sure our voices are loud. Because you know what? They're listening. We're being heard. And there have been reports about an unprecedented amount of calls going into the U.S. Senate. More so than our fight last summer for health care. So we have to continue to call. We have to continue to come out and protest. There are, 200 vigils across the country. And we can't stop, we won't stop. And on Friday, if Republicans in Congress do not listen to us, we will continue to fight, go into the districts, make the calls, knock on doors, and make sure that we kick them the hell out. And we will hold them accountable for the way that they've treated women, the way they've stepped on women, the way that they've attacked women, the way that they've taken Trump's ugliness of standing up for the men and attacking and berating women. And we will hold them accountable for all of it. Because if Republicans do not say no to Kavanaugh on Friday, we will say no to them in November.
That's right, we will. Next up, we have two members from an amazing organization that stands up on behalf of working people every single day. Give it up from SEIU, Letitia and Barbara.
Gracias por estar aquí. Mi nombre es Leticia Soto. Soy promotora janitor, miembro de CUUSWW y sobreviviente de violación sexual en el turno de la noche. Estoy aquí para decir que yo creo en la doctora Ford. Después de que mi abusador me violó, él todavía me dijo, nadie te va a creer, eres una inmigrante en este país. Nadie cree en inmigrantes. Son como la basura que tiras cuando haces la limpieza de janitor. Eso dijo, porque él sabía el poder que eso le daba. Explotar mi estatus como mujer inmigrante. Mujer necesitada de un trabajo. Y como madre soltera, con miedo a ser separada de sus hijos.
My name is Leti Soto. I'm a member of SEIU USWW. I am a janitor and a survivor of rape in the night shift. I am here to say today that I believe Dr. Ford. After my abuser raped me, he still told me, "No one will believe you. You're an immigrant." In this country, nobody believes in immigrants. They are like the garbage that you throw away when you clean as a janitor. He said this because he knew the power that this gave him. Exploding my status as an immigrant woman, a woman in need of work, and also as a single mother with the fear of being separated from her children.
Por eso es importante creer en sobrevivientes como la doctora Ford. Pero también en trabajadoras como yo. Porque como promotora en contra de estos delitos, sé que la violencia sexual se trata de poder. El poder que hombres como el juez Canavan tuvo como joven privilegiado y que aún tiene como juez. Sobrevivientes como yo y Bárbara en la pelea de los 15 hemos roto nuestro silencio, ayunando, marchando y cambiando la cultura en el sitio de trabajo. Mujeres sobrevivientes del acoso sexual, hoy les digo, ustedes importan y yo les creo.
And that's why it's important to believe in survivors like Dr. Ford, but also in workers like me. Because as a promoter against these crimes, I know that sexual violence is about power. The power that men like Judge Kavanaugh had as a privileged young man and who still has as a judge. Survivors like myself and Barbara from the 5 for 15 have broken our silence in multiple ways, like fasting, marching, and changing the rape culture in our workplace. Women and survivors of sexual assault, today I tell you, you matter and I believe you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Barbara, and I'm from St. Louis. I'm a McDonald's worker. I'm here to tell y'all that my story about sexual harassment I experienced at the company. It was like, it's clear that Kavanaugh is unfit to serve in the Supreme Court. It all started when I walked into McDonald's on my first day. My coworker decided to tell me that he can take me on a tour of the store. His tone and the way he was looking at me, licking his lips, let me know that it was uncomfortable and that it wasn't something that a woman should have to deal with. And that it was a sexual, I guess, way of him telling me to come back. I don't know. But his remarks only got worse and more explicit over the time. I felt powerless, and if I reported it on him, somehow I would have been the one getting in trouble. I don't know how, but I would have been the one getting in trouble. Soon after that, a manager decided to also interact on it with his comments, telling me how my lips look nice and juicy, how my uniform fitted me in all the right places, how I look good on top of him. Thank you. I love y'all too. Thank you. The manager then took it up on his own to come up to me and actually physically touch my breast. That day was the day that I decided that I'm fed up. That day was the day that I basically got fired, but I didn't get fired. I quit. But they made me quit by sexually harassing me. The general manager didn't do anything but laugh. Like it was funny. She acted like she did not care. So when I called and told them that I was quitting, they didn't ask why. They didn't show no type of concerns or anything. It was just like I was in a lose-lose situation. But because of how brave I am, I have finally said enough is enough through the Me Too movement. I am now fighting back as well. 2 weeks ago, me, myself, and other McDonald's workers went on a strike in several different cities protesting sexual harassment at McDonald's. And McDonald's and demanded that the company protect its workers. For every woman like me and Dr. Ford and other accusers of Kavanaugh, there are many women who remain silent. To them, I say, you're not alone. You got a good support system. We are with you. We are fighting for you. We are going to fight like hell to stop someone like Kavanaugh for reaching the Supreme Court. My co-workers at McDonald's thought they could take advantage of me and consider their lives more important than mine, just like Kavanaugh has done through his consistent lies in the U.S. citizen and the American people. It is more clear than ever that regardless of what the FBI report does or doesn't show, Kavanaugh is a sexual predator. It should not be allowed nowhere near the building that I am standing in front of today. If he lied before, what changed in 2018? Thank you, guys.
All right, we need one more round of applause. I'm going to start a cheer here. I want everybody to say, trust women. Are you with me? Ready, set, go. Trust women. 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 Thank you. It is those stories that are making the difference here, and the bravery that it takes to get up here on this stage and do that is incredible, and thank you. Up next, we have a wonderful woman. Oh, but before I begin, there are a lot of us here, and that is amazing, but what we can't do is stand on those stairs. So if you're on the stairs, please come down, join your brothers and sisters down here, give everybody a, big high five, and we're going to do this together, but just please get off the stairs. Thank you. I think maybe some of you went to a little something called the Women's March. You heard of that? Well, let's hear it for Bob Bland, organizer of the Women's March.
All right. Thank you so much for everyone who is here tonight, and thank you to everyone who organized this incredible vigil. I am so proud to follow powerful women of color like Tarana Burke of the Me Too movement. The women who just told their stories right now from SEIU. Tamika Mallory and Linda Sarsour, my fellow co-chairs of the Women's March. And the hundreds of women that have come and met us and told their stories over the last month. And I just want to say that without the Me Too movement, without Tarana Burke, I wouldn't even have recognized that myself, I was a survivor. So I just want to say that we don't just believe survivors, we are survivors. And when we started this fight a month ago, we didn't know about the allegations against Brett Kavanaugh. But we knew he wasn't right for the job. We knew he was going to be anti-women's rights. We knew that he was going to be against voting rights, workers' rights, disability rights, immigration rights. He was going to take away our health care. He was going to be against our Black and brown communities. He was going to hurt our educational system and our criminal justice system and all the work that everybody here in this coalition has been doing tirelessly for years. And so that is why, exactly 1 month ago, a coalition of organizations, Women's March, CPD Action, Housing Works, NARAL, Ultraviolet, Save SCOTUS Coalition, and so many of these rooms came together, and we said we were going to cancel Kavanaugh. From the first day, we went in there in numbers too big to ignore, and we got arrested telling our truth and speaking our truth to power. And then we came back again, and then we came back again, and then we came back again, and we did not stop. And when we found, and I want to recognize that I see so many of the women who have been with us this month, I want to recognize that we're tired. We're tired. I'm tired of this. Are you tired? Yes! What is it going to take? Why are the senators of the Judiciary Committee keeping America hostage? Why are they keeping women hostage? And why are they continuing to say, let me get this straight, Senator Grassley, Senator McConnell, President Trump, I'm talking directly to you right now. Let me get this straight. So you're going to make us have Brett Kavanaugh as a Supreme Court justice whether we like it or not. Is that right? No. Okay, so you're going to tell us that it doesn't matter what we say or what we want. He is going to be a justice on the Supreme Court. Sounds like an abuser to me. I don't know about you guys. Okay, so Grassley, McConnell, President Trump, Judge Kavanaugh, you gotta learn the definition of consent, bro. Okay? So what we're gonna do is what women always do. We're gonna keep on fighting. Okay? And I want all of you to consider getting on a bus with us after this rally to join us in a nonviolent direct action training at St. Stephen's and the Incarnation Church. Or you can also join us tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the Capitol Liaison Hotel for another training, because tomorrow we're going to march. Not because we want to. I would very much like to be home with my kids right now, I gotta tell you. But because we have to. Because we have to tell our stories. We have to bare our souls. We have to urge you and phone call and phone call and phone call. Couldn't you just listen the first time? We don't want Brett Kavanaugh. He's not good for women. He's not good for survivors. And we're going to march tomorrow from the district court that Brett Kavanaugh currently resides at 333 Constitution Avenue, right here to SCOTUS. And we're going to tell them that we will not be silent. So join us. You can check it out at cancelkavanaugh.com or anything Women's March, but get the details. Please join us. And I want to end it with a chant from one of our most powerful actions when we shut down the vote. Sorry, this is so emotional. When we shut down the vote of the Senate Judiciary Committee last week with rape whistles. And we said, and I want you to repeat after me, we are survivors!
We are survivors!
We believe Christine Ford!
We believe Christine Ford!
If you vote yes on Kavanaugh,
if you vote yes on Kavanaugh,
you are a rape apologist!
You are a rape apologist!
Women are watching!
Women are watching!
And we will not go back.
And we will not go back!
Women vote!
Women vote!
Survivors vote!
Survivors vote!
And November is coming.
November is coming!
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so much, Bob. Up next, we have two amazing women from the People for the American Way. Give it up for Lizette Ocampo and Marge Baker.
Thank you. I'm Lizette Ocampo, Political Director at People for the American Way, and I'm here because I want to make clear that when people speak up, not only should we be heard, but we should be believed. Senators who vote to confirm Brett Kavanaugh are telling women either they don't believe us or they believe us and don't care. A vote for Kavanaugh is a vote to tell survivors to shut up, to be silent, to stay out of the way. It's a message to every young girl that her safety doesn't matter. It's telling every woman that our stories don't matter. And think about what it's telling young boys. On yesterday, when Trump was at his rally, you may have noticed he had some young boys standing beside him as he led a chorus of laughter and mocking Dr. Ford. And as we recall, laughter was one of the key parts of her trauma. And laughter was mentioned earlier in the story from the brave woman about her manager laughing at her. This week, we're going to see which senators care about women, and we're going to see which senators care more about their party. But let me tell you, whether or not they believe Dr. Blasey Ford or Deborah Ramirez or Julie Swetnick, they'd better believe us. They'd better believe that we will remember this vote. We will remember on election day next month. We will remember on election day next year. We will remember on election day in 2020. And we will remember on every single election day until we tell every single member of Congress that they can't do anything but believe the power of our voice. We will no longer be ignored. Thank you very much. Si se puede.
Hi there. My name is Marge Baker. I'm the Executive Vice President of People for the American Way. We are a 35-year-old civil rights organization with 1.5 million members around the country, and you can bet that those members are super active and working on this as hard as they possibly can. But what I want to say right now to folks is, this is crunch time. This is crunch time. And I don't know about you all, but for me, this has been the most intensive battle I have been in perhaps ever. And as I stand here, I am so incredibly grateful and humbled to be among such engaged, principled, committed activists. I want to thank you all here, everybody who's watching. I want to thank you all for absolutely all that you are doing, and give yourselves a hand. Give yourselves a hand. Woo! So amidst the horrors of Donald Trump's gutter politics last night, and a clearly inadequate FBI investigation, I want to take just a minute to talk about two things that I think are really important. First, what is plain as day is that Donald Trump, Mitch McConnell, and Chuck Grassley will do and say anything to get Brett Kavanaugh confirmed. And so will Brett Kavanaugh, right? So let that sink in for a minute. So will Brett Kavanaugh. Second, what's really important as we go into these next several days is Brett Kavanaugh has utterly failed his job interview for the Supreme Court. Utterly. He has lied to the committee. As Senator Leahy has said, not just in the most recent hearings, but every single time he has testified before the committee as a nominee. Every single time. He has shown that he cannot be trusted to be a fair-minded arbiter of the facts and the law. He is a partisan operative whose goal is to drive the agenda of those who got him nominated and those who are striving mightily to get him confirmed. And we know what that agenda is. It's to overturn Roe v. Wade. It's to take away your health care. It's to make it harder for voters from marginalized communities to vote. It's to crush unions. It's to put more money in politics, and it's to take away the rights from LGBTQ people. That's the agenda. So he's lied, he can't be trusted to be fair-minded, and he has clearly shown that he does not have the temperament to warrant a seat on the Supreme Court, let alone the position he currently has on the D.C. Circuit. It's up to Brett Kavanaugh. It's not up to us. It's not up to senators. It's certainly not up to Dr. Blasey Ford. It's up to Brett Kavanaugh to show that he is qualified for this job promotion he so desperately wants, and he has utterly failed. His nomination should be withdrawn. And if it's not, then his nomination has to be defeated. And no matter what, we will not let this confirmation happen, no matter what. Let me tell you something. Women are not a speed bump on the way to achieving the extreme political agenda he wants to achieve. We are not to be plowed right through. Our stories are powerful. We've heard so many tonight. Our voices are powerful. Our votes are powerful. We are going to stand up. We're going to fight back. And we're going to stop Brett Kavanaugh. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marge. Let's give it up one more time for Songrise DC, who's going to lead us in another song right now. Songrise DC, everyone.
Good evening. We are Songrise. We seek to inspire people to action through song. We are proud to lend our voice to this vigil, to this movement towards freedom, towards justice and truth. We hope that we can give you strength and courage to continue in the days that come forward, but we also invite you to lend your voice to the cause. The next song we're going to sing is fairly simple. It states, "We have come too far. We can't turn around. We'll flood the streets with justice. We are freedom bound."
We have come too far, we can't turn around. We'll flood the streets with justice, we are freedom bound. We have come too far, we can't turn around. We'll flood the streets with justice, we are freedom bound. We'll flood the streets with justice, we are freedom bound. We'll flood the streets with justice, we are freedom around. We'll flood the streets with justice, we are freedom around. We'll flood the streets with justice, we are freedom bound. We have come too far, we can't turn around. We'll flood the streets with justice, we are freedom around. We'll flood the streets with justice, we are freedom around. We'll flood the streets with justice, we are freedom around. We'll flood the streets with justice, we are freedom around. We'll flood the streets with justice, we are freedom around. We'll flood the streets with justice, we are freedom around. We'll flood the streets with justice, we are flood the streets with justice, we are freedom bound.
Thank you so much. Up next, we have an incredible woman from an incredible organization in our own voice. Give it up for Jessica Pinckney.
Hello, look at this crowd. I am Jessica Pinckney, and I'm with In Our Own Voice, the National Black Women's Reproductive Justice Agenda. Thank you. And we are so proud to be out here this evening with all these amazing organizations, all you amazing people, making our voices loud and clear to say that this fight is not over and Brett Kavanaugh has got to go. Before any of the survivors came out sharing their stories of assault, we knew that our freedom, our rights, our bodily autonomy, and the right to make decisions about our bodies, our families, our communities, and our futures was on the line. And now that is even more true. In Our Own Voice, we work every day to lift up the voices of Black women and girls who can best speak to how our lives are impacted day in and day out by the harmful policies of this administration and this Congress. It's crystal clear, particularly after last week's hearings and the actions we've seen this week, that Congress does not have women's interests at heart and certainly does not have Black women's interests at heart. We have always counted on the Supreme Court to be a backstop for our democracy, and now that is at risk. We cannot stand by and let this happen. We have to make our voices clear. Kavanaugh would be terrible for Black women and girls. We know that. Women and girls of color, LGBTQ folks, have the most to lose if Brett Kavanaugh is confirmed to the Supreme Court. We know that young people across the country will be impacted by Supreme Court decisions for decades upon decades and more. Today, we are out here to make our point loud and clear. We won't go back. We won't go back to senators covering up poor, shameful behavior for men, because for so many of our communities, we fought so hard, in fact, too hard, for the rights and access we have today. And there's so much more we deserve, and that is rightfully ours. We fundamentally deserve the right to control our bodies, our sexuality, our gender, our work, and our reproduction. We fundamentally deserve to parent when we want, how we want, and if we want. We fundamentally deserve to raise our children in safe communities, free from environmental harm and gun violence. Black women have tried to shield our children from the harms of lead in the waters and poison in the air. We've tried to protect them from harassment in the education system, in the workplace, at the ballot box, and everywhere in between. On these issues and so many more, Kavanaugh would be one of the ultimate deciders, and a detrimental one at that. These cases will impact our economic, social, and political freedoms for a lifetime or longer. Kavanaugh's nomination threatens all of the progress we've made, but more than that, he threatens all of the progress we must make to live healthy, safe, and whole lives, and to create that for the many generations who will come after us. Kavanaugh is a threat to abortion access and quality health care. He's a threat to voting rights. He's a threat to immigrant justice. He's a threat to workers' rights. He's a threat to environmental justice. He's a threat to education, and the last few weeks show that he's a direct threat to women's personal safety and security. He's a threat to the progress we deserve, the progress we want, and the progress we need. We can't stand for it. We won't stand for it. We need a Supreme Court that will protect us from structural racism, sexism, homophobia, environmental harm, and so much more, instead of actively contributing to it. Black women and girls have been saying it all along and will continue to say it. Brett Kavanaugh is a threat to our livelihood.
Thank you, Jessica. Any of you guys ever heard of this little thing called Planned Parenthood? Anybody ever heard of that? Well, give it up for one of Planned Parenthood's finest, Maine's own. She came here all the way from Maine, so she's here to tell Susan Collins a little something. Give it up for Taylor Cray.
Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Cray, and I'm from Reedfield, Maine. I'm here today because I believe survivors. I'm here because when I watched Dr. Christine Blasey Ford last week, I felt like I was watching myself. I am a survivor. During my first year of college, when I was 18, I came home one night after a party. I was drunk. A boy who lived in my hall came to my door saying he was going to check on me. This was a boy I knew well, and this was a boy that I trusted. I told him I was fine and he should leave me alone, but he didn't. He came into my room and into my bed. He touched me like he was entitled to my body, and when I asked him to leave, he refused. I didn't tell anyone about what happened to me. I still see him in class, and I still see him on campus. I made up reasons not to call it assault, because he didn't rape me, because I was drunk, because we were friends. Those reasons do not erase the pain that I feel when I see him. They do not make it my fault, and they do not make him innocent. Every survivor I've ever talked to says that their story isn't bad enough to make a difference, that it's not relevant. I'm here because I know mine is. I know Dr. Ford's is. Deborah Ramirez's is. Julie Swetnick's is. When Dr. Ford testified, it was like my story was coming out of her mouth. Every question they asked, intended to make her doubt herself and her memory, cut me like a knife. And this wasn't the first time. I have heard my story come from the mouths of other people so many times. There will never be a stage big enough to hold all of us. There will never be a microphone loud enough. I told myself there were so many things I could have done to prevent this. But my fear is that no one told him there was one simple thing he could have done. Stop. My fear is that we are not telling men like him, men like Brett Kavanaugh, that there is an easy way to end all of this. Stop. That's why I'm here today. I shouldn't have to be. We shouldn't have to be. We should not have to tell our stories in front of strangers and cameras. But I will, and we will. And I will continue to tell this story over and over again until this stops. Thank you.
Give it up one more time for Taylor. Thank you, Taylor. Up next, we have the serious honor of hearing from the Executive Director of End Rape on Campus. Give it up for Jess Davidson.
You know, End Rape on Campus has been out here every single night since Brett Kavanaugh was first named as Trump's choice, and I have to say, this is the biggest crowd I have seen since that night here at the Supreme Court. Thank you. You know, I've been thinking a lot this week about a story that my parents like to tell. When I was about 9 or 10 years old, my family went on a summer trip to the Field Museum. And I had a lot of questions from my parents about the animals that were in the displays at the Field Museum in Chicago. The orangutans and the lions, they looked really real. And I had so many questions about this. My parents didn't think too much of it until a couple of weeks later. They came home. And I was surrounded by stacks of paper. I had taken every single piece of printer paper in my dad's downstairs office, much to his dismay. And I had printed letters. And my parents said, Jess, what are you doing? And I said, well, I've written a letter to every major museum in the United States, and I have one for George Bush, and I have one for everybody in Congress. I want them to stop killing the animals so that they can be displayed in museums. While a little misguided at 9, and then again at 20, when I was raped on January 1st, 2015, when I was a junior in college, and tonight, at 24 years old and as the executive director of a national organization that represents millions of survivors of campus sexual assault around the country, I felt then what we all feel here together, the fierce urgency of now. We have experienced such great pain this week together. As Dr. Blasey Ford described the laughter that she can never forget, so many of us heard laughter at our own expenses in our heads. As she described her fear when traveling, when remodeling her home every day, so many of us were confronted with the ways that our traumas have stuck with us our entire lives. But we also experienced something that when I first came out publicly as a survivor in 2016, I dreamed of, but I never imagined. A mass movement where believing and trusting survivors would be seen widely as a moral imperative rather than as my own pipe dream. When I came forward in 2016, there was a whisper network. 3 women came to me in the bathroom of the college bar, and they said, me too. 17, sorry, I gotta take my glasses off, it is bright up here. 17 came to me in my first class that day and said, me too. 41 people that I didn't know on Instagram direct messaged me, and 5 on LinkedIn. Hundreds of people I knew, and thousands that I didn't know, as my story was shared more than 16,000 times in those first 24 hours. Me too, me too, me too. The Whisper network I knew bulged at its seams was stress tested as Donald Trump bragged, as we marched, and as I held a sign over my head that day that said my president should not remind me of my rapist, and hundreds of you came out, hugged me, said me too, me too, me too. Thousands became hundreds of thousands. And last fall, thanks to the work of Tarana Burke, thousands became millions. Me too, me too, me too. I never imagined when I felt so alone that first day when I came forward, when I just felt that I was one, that tonight I would be joined by hundreds, maybe more than 1,000, and that we would be joined by millions around the world to say, we believe survivors. We believe survivors. This week has been devastating and traumatizing. I've been hurting so damn bad. I know you have too. But I'm also inspired because I have never been more sure than I am right now. Survivors, we are not alone. We are not alone. The Senate rules, the misogyny of these men, and history would tell us that right now we're fighting Goliath. And it is pretty easy to lose faith. But who the hell is to say that we will not be David? Who is to say that we cannot stop this? 1 in every 4 American voters is a survivor of sexual assault. Bet you didn't know that, Senate Judiciary Committee. And more than half of all American voters know a survivor. Let's be clear. The Senate will hear our voices. And if they don't, they will know our rage. Like Dr. Blasey Ford, as a survivor, and like survivors everywhere, of that, I am 100% certain. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have a really exciting update. There are 750 of you here right now. 750. And a late-breaking update. I know I told you there were 200 events across the country going on right now, but guess what? I lied. There are 300. Awesome. Next up, I want you to hear from my wonderful dear friend from the NAACP, Hillary Shelton.
Thank you, thank you. Good evening. We're here because we are indeed fired up. We're fired up at the outrage that they would nominate someone like Brett Kavanaugh to serve in the highest court in the land. We're fired up because I have to apologize. I have to apologize because about 13 years ago, his name was brought forward to serve on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, and we said no. We took a look at his record and saw just how bad he was. How bad he was on core democratic issues like the right to vote, the right to equal protection under law, the right for a woman to be able to travel from point A to point B without being interfered with any, let me keep this PG, anyone that would indeed not allow her to do what she chooses to do. But indeed, here we are. We're standing here because those men serving on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and it was only men. You know, the thing that was outrageous to me is they hired a woman to ask their questions. They hid behind someone that would come forward with the appearance of integrity, but give her questions. Even I think she, judging by the look on her face, was outraged that you would ask me to ask her that question. So as we move forward, we know the fight is on. The fight is on because we know if America is to live up to all it promises to be, if the Constitution is to be interpreted in a way in which it was intended to, not a set of narrowly fashioned ideas by those that want to go back to the good old days, those that speak to issues of wanting to make America great again. I'm still trying to figure out what again looks like because it's never been real in my life. So, brothers and sisters, thank you. Thank you for being here and helping us to straighten this out finally. We never should have let the man sit on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. We knew better, but he did. Those who moved ahead to bum rush him through are trying to bum rush him through one more time. But we will not be bum rushed, and we get something that George Bush didn't. If you fool me once, shame on you. If you fool me again, just wait and see what happens to you. It's a whole different program as we move to make America live up to its promises. So brothers and sisters, we stand with you side by side. 500,000 card-carrying members throughout the United States. We're in every state in the United States. We're on military bases in Italy, Germany, Korea, and Japan. And we know what discrimination looks like. We know what it looks like when we hear the voices of those that would sit before our Senate Judiciary Committee and say what he said, and every time they challenged him, particularly when the women asked him the questions, he would turn around and say, well, what about you? Well, the yous he's pointing at are not the yous that want to be on the Supreme Court. He has forgotten clearly what he was supposed to be doing. As a matter of fact, maybe he had one of those famous blackouts. But we haven't forgotten. We know what America looks like when we let men like Mr. Kavanaugh serve in positions of importance. We've looked at his record from over 12 years ago when he was able to sit on the Supreme Court, and we get it. We get it. He was a bad idea then, and he's a worse idea now. We have got to stop Brett Kavanaugh. So let me go and stand to the side and cheer and enjoy the speeches because of you, I left my office, I was down. I wasn't feeling good about things because I saw how far they were able to go. But the thing that lifted me up is the fact that as we stand here today, they had planned on confirming this man last week, but guess what? He's still waiting, and we are still here. We're fired up, and we are ready to go.
Give it up for Hillary. Love her. Up next, we have two incredible women from the National Latina Institute for Reproductive Health. Please get it up for Bethany and Sarah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Flores Shannon. Good evening. I'm Bethany Van Kampen, and we are with the National Latina Institute for Reproductive Health. We are the only national reproductive justice organization dedicated to fighting for the health, dignity, and justice of the 28 million Latinas, their families, and communities in the U.S. We are here today to say we believe Dr. Ford. Didn't plan for that. We believe Dr. Ford. We believe Deborah Ramirez. We believe Julie Swetnick, and we believe all of the brave survivors who stepped forward to share their story. We see you. We believe you. We support you. We call on Kavanaugh to withdraw his name from the nomination to the Supreme Court. Withdraw! If he does not, the Senate must vote him down. Vote him down! 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 Woo! The time is now for the Senate to take a stand against the abuse, mistreatment, and harassment of women, especially young women and girls. The FBI investigation must be thorough, it must be independent, and it must be a real investigation, not a cover for wavering senators. They must vote him down. 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 For Latinas,
those who already face significant barriers to their legal right to abortion, access to contraception, and affordable health care services, Kavanaugh's nomination is a direct threat. Every day, I speak with Latinas who share their personal stories with me, stories that are filled with fear. We have so much on the line, whether it's our access to reproductive health care or our ability to remain with our families regardless of immigration status. Do you know what I say to them? Que somos poderosas. We proudly wear shirts that say soy poderosa. I am powerful. When we come together in times like tonight, we are especially powerful. Kavanaugh's dissenting opinion in the case of Jane Doe makes it clear that he is willing to strip immigrant women from their right to make decisions about her health, family, and future with self-determination. Boo! Crossing a border or being in a detention center does not strip a person of their basic human rights. All Janes and all immigrants carry with them their fundamental human rights, including to decide when and if to become a parent. The stakes are too high, and we will not back down. He must withdraw now, or he must be voted out. Thank you. Vote him out! 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 Thank you so much.
It's amazing to see this crowd going on so strong. Thank you all. Let me tell you, our allies in the West Coast, Alaska, California, Arizona, they are joining us right now. These vigils are happening all evening. And with that, I want to introduce the next guest, Sam Crane from the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. Give it up for Sam.
Hello, everyone. Hi. I'm Sam Crane. I'm the Director of Public Policy at the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. We are a nationwide self-advocacy organization that advocates for the rights of the autistic community and the disability community as a whole. I am also a Holton Arms alum. Although I left before graduation, I think it still counts. Does count. I had 4 years at Holton Arms, so I know what it was like. All right. The rights of people with disabilities have always been under threat. From the right to be free from medical abuse and eugenic sterilization, to the right to simply exist outside of institutions, we've relied on the Supreme Court to protect our rights. But sometimes it's come through for us, like in the Olmstead decision, which upheld our right to live outside of institutions. And sometimes it's really failed, like in the Buck versus Bell decision, which upheld a state's decision to permanently sterilize a woman who'd been labeled as intellectually disabled. And because our rights are always under threat, every nomination to the Supreme Court is high stakes for our community. And regardless of who's nominated, we always do a careful review of each nominee's record. Brett Kavanaugh's record on disability is one of the worst I've ever seen. First, there are the multiple times that Kavanaugh suggested he'd overturn the Affordable Care Act, even though our community depends on that law to protect us from discrimination, ensure our access to health insurance, even though we have pre-existing conditions, and increase our access to Medicaid. But there's also his shocking decision in Doe Exfeld Tarlow versus DC. That case involved 3 women who had been forced to have medically unnecessary surgery without their consent. One had an elective eye operation. The other 2 had been forced to have abortions. The DC government, which had legal decision-making power over them, had not even asked what they wanted, not because they didn't have anything to say, but because it just wasn't DC's policy to ask questions before rubber stamping consent forms when doctors recommended surgery. These 3 brave women spoke out, and they filed a lawsuit to get DC to change its policy so the trauma that they experienced would never happen to them or anyone else ever again. And they won. The DC District Court ordered DC to at least try to find out what people wanted before forcing them to get elective surgery. But then Kavanaugh stepped in. Instead of listening to what these women had to say, he assumed that they wouldn't say anything worth listening to just because they were disabled and they had been determined to be incompetent. He said that people who had been deemed incompetent had no right to a say about what happens to their bodies. He said listening to women with disabilities about what happens to their bodies, quote, does not make logical sense. And what's more, and this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone here, his decision included serious misstatements about the record. He claimed the case was about life-saving treatment. It was about elective surgery, and you can read the lower court opinion. It's very clear on this. He claimed that no other jurisdictions required decision makers to consider the wishes of people with intellectual disabilities who were deemed incompetent, even though it's a very common requirement. And in fact, it's the norm, and it's been the norm for 20 years. Kavanaugh's misstatements led to him taking disability rights backwards in time by 20 years, and he didn't even bother to get his facts straight. If Kavanaugh is placed on the Supreme Court, our rights are in danger. We can't trust him to take people with disabilities seriously. We can't trust him to protect our right to self-determination about our bodies. We can't trust him to protect our access to health care. And now that he's attacked all progressive groups and accused us of being part of a conspiracy against him, we can't trust him to fairly hear our cases at all. We can't trust him, period, and that's why we've been urging the whole disability community to oppose his nomination. Thank you.
Stand up, fight back! When birth control is under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
When survivors are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
What do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
All right. So, really briefly, because I know this next person coming up, one of the most powerful moments of the past couple of weeks was hearing high school students speak up. This one high school young woman spoke up and said, high school boys are watching this across the country, and if they see that Brett Kavanaugh can get away from it, what does that mean for me and the boys I have to interact with? Paraphrasing. Young people are not our future. They are having an impact right now. They are our present right now in this fight. And that's why I'm so proud to introduce one of the leaders of an organization, Uniting for Reproductive and Gender Equity Executive Director, Kimberly Ines McGuire, who's organizing alongside those young people. Kimberly.
Equal justice under law. Dr. Christine Blasey Ford has not seen equal justice under law. Deborah Ramirez has not seen equal justice under law. Julie Swetnick has not seen equal justice under law. When I was 19 years old and I was sexually assaulted by a different young white privileged guy in a different mansion in Montgomery County, Maryland, I did not see equal justice under law. And we know the truth. We will not see justice as long as the seats of power are held by those who protect, and perpetuate white supremacy, patriarchy, and rape culture. We will certainly not see justice from a prison industrial complex that exists primarily to put black and brown bodies behind bars. We know Brett Kavanaugh is unfit to sit on the bench in the highest court in this land. We know that young people will live the longest and suffer the greatest if he is allowed to be confirmed. I know that the young people that URGE is organizing in red and purple states across the South and Midwest already fight uphill to try to get an abortion when they need one, for comprehensive sex ed, immigration justice, and LGBTQ liberation. We don't need a liar and sexual predator making our lives any harder. And while the face may have changed, the fight is not new. Brett Kavanaugh is nothing more than a tool of a system that has never worked for us. And we will not back down. We know how to fight this system. We know this enemy. And we will plant the seeds of justice with our voices and our votes. We will water it with our tears and our sweat. And we will grow what has never been given: equal justice under law. Young people remain committed to justice, and we will double our efforts to achieve our vision of reproductive justice, of a world where all people have agency over their own bodies, over our relationships, and the power, knowledge, and resources to exercise that agency. Not only without coercion and violence, but with joy and liberation. Women, people of color, indigenous communities, LGBTQ people, and immigrants, young people have been fighting the Brett Kavanaughs of the world for generations, and we won't stop now. Thank you.
Let me hear from you if you've been walking the hallways of those Senate buildings. Then you know how tiring it is. It's exhausting. I don't wake up every morning wanting to do that, but we do it because it's our future. What has kept me going is seeing some very powerful people, including people of faith, walking those hallways alongside us. And that's why I'm so happy to introduce a board member from the Religious Institute, Sally Steenland. Sally.
We're still here. We're all still here. Very exciting. So my name is Sally Steenland, and I am so proud and honored and happy to be here as a board member of the Religious Institute. I'm proud to speak on behalf of thousands of religious leaders and people of faith and conscience across the country. We are standing up, and we are saying no to the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. What do we believe? We believe that it is wrong to lie under oath. We believe that it is wrong to mislead others and manipulate the truth. Brett Kavanaugh lied, misled, and manipulated facts in history. That is disqualifying. In last week's hearings, Kavanaugh unmasked himself as a partisan warrior, not a principled, fair-minded jurist. That is disqualifying. And now he and his supporters are pushing for his quick confirmation, bum rushing him in, before the FBI can complete a fair and full investigation. You know what we say? Not so fast. As people of faith and conscience, we will not remain silent. We will not cede our voice to the religious right. We believe Dr. Christine Blasey Ford and the other women who have accused Brett Kavanaugh of sexual assault, and we stand with survivors across the country, including those who've been inspired by Dr. Blasey's courage to speak, many for the first time. And I want to tell you tonight, I am one of those people. I thank Dr. Blasey with all my heart. It wasn't easy. It was a long time ago, and when I saw that woman get questions and I thought I had no corroborating evidence, it was terrifying. I cried through the whole thing. I'll tell you what my faith teaches me. It teaches forgiveness, but it also teaches justice. And a colleague of mine recently said, moral reckonings are not pretty, they are necessary. And last week's hearing, it was not a national disgrace. You know what a national disgrace was? Centuries of sexually degrading women. Judge Kavanaugh poses a threat to women's health and rights, to immigrants, to LGBTQ people, to workers, to communities of color, and to so many others of us who depend on equal protection under the law. If he is confirmed, Kavanaugh will rule on cases involving voting rights, the environment, affirmative action, and discrimination. He will rule on Roe v. Wade and the Affordable Care Act. He will have the power to tilt the law even further to benefit the powerful and threaten the health, well-being, and dignity of millions of us. So what we must do is what we're doing right now. Stand up and speak out for the common good. And that's what we're doing, and it's happening in communities across the country. And when we do this, we are standing up for America's better self, for who we can be and who we must be. And altogether, 750 of us times 300, like who knows how many, we are resilient, we are strong. Our voices, our witness, our lives, our bodies matter. We link arms, we join hands, and together we say, stop Kavanaugh. Thank you.
All right. So the next organization, the next person, Max Sokol from Bend the Arc. Bend the Arc is a movement of tens of thousands of progressive Jews from across the country, which I include my boyfriend as well. Hey, Travis. And has been another amazing force walking the halls of those Senate buildings. So I'd like to introduce Max Sokol, senior organizer with Bend the Arc.
Good evening. My name is Max Sokol. I'm the senior national organizer at Bend the Arc Jewish Action. Our Jewish resistance movement has been challenging the Trump agenda since the president declared his candidacy in 2015, and we are not stopping now. What we saw in Judiciary Committee testimony last week left no doubt. Dr. Christine Blasey Ford is credible. Brett Kavanaugh is not. We have an FBI investigation, not because there's some ambiguity in the quality of the testimony, but simply because it provided some political cover for certain senators who remain undecided. Tonight I have a message for these indecisive senators. America has already seen enough. Haven't you? We have seen enough of Brett Kavanaugh. We have heard more than enough from Brett Kavanaugh. Dr. Ford was credible. The many witnesses who have stepped forward to say that Judge Kavanaugh offered misleading answers or lied about his history as a frat boy are also credible. Even if the White House's sabotage efforts are successful and the FBI returns an inconclusive investigation, none of this is going away. To Senator Manchin, Senator Collins, Senator Murkowski, Senator Flake, Senator Heitkamp, the time has come to ask yourselves, are you willing to trade the credibility of this court, its legitimacy, its future, for the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh? There is a well-known story in the Jewish tradition that you may not know, but I will quickly share it. When we mourn the destruction of the ancient temple in Jerusalem, we tell a story about community leaders who failed to protect the dignity of someone who was humiliated by a rich man. They failed out of their indecision, their excessive humility, and their failure to provide moral leadership set in motion a chain of events that led to the Roman Empire destroying Jerusalem. Leaders who care more about keeping up appearances than pursuing the truth endanger all of us. Leaders who pursue order instead of justice will lead us to ruin. That is what a 2,000-year-old tradition teaches us, and what I came here to say to you tonight. I I'm not a rabbi or a member of the clergy, but I would like to conclude with a short prayer, mostly because while I've been standing here tonight and looking around, I recognize basically every single face I see from the halls of the Senate over the past several weeks and probably much longer. And I know that you are tired, and I am tired, and we have had enough. But I want to leave you with these words, and if you're moved to say amen after I say them, you can. Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete this work, but neither are you free to abandon it. Thank you.
I am out here today, even though as a gay man, because my mom came out to me as having access to abortion care. And one of the first organizations that I got involved with, when I decided that I had to start speaking up as a man, and not just allow the women in my lives to fight for gender equity. One of the first organizations taught me that you can be pro-faith, pro-family, and pro-choice, and that's the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice. We're honored today as our final speaker, the Reverend Carl Jackson, one of the co-executives for the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice. Carrie Jackson, I apologize. Carrie Jackson, Reverend Carrie Jackson from the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice. Thank you.
Ain't no stopping us now. We're on the move. We won't stop. Ain't no stopping us now. We got the groove. We won't stop. So I know you did not expect that. But I want to tell you, in 1967, there was a group, a network of clergy across the country, Protestant, Catholic, and Jewish, across the country, who said women need to have the legal right to make decisions about their own bodies. And some people in this day believe that there's only one religious voice regarding abortion. That is not the truth. And so you've heard all the speakers talk about the ways in which this nominee would be such incredibly bad news for all women, but it's also all families. Because the truth is, when women don't have autonomy over their own bodies, it impacts the entire society. We all lose. Before I went to seminary, I went to law school, and there I came to love the Constitution. What I love about the Constitution are many things, but one is the separation of powers. And this nominee has shown us very clearly that there would not be any separation. This nominee has shown us very clearly that the kind of bipartisan judgment and integrity that we need in the highest court of this land simply would not be brought to that role. And this nominee has shown us that the charge of the Supreme Court to let the president and the Congress know when they have overstepped their bounds, it is very clear that this particular nominee would not do those things. So there are a lot of reasons that we must say, ain't no stopping us now. Now, I too am a survivor of rape and sexual assault. When I was 14 and I was raped by a stranger, and I told my mom, and she called the police, and the two white male police officers who came made a judgment about this little 14-year-old black girl that, oh, all black girls have sex with strangers. And they did not believe my story, and I felt raped a second time in the same day. And so a few years later, when I was a student in college, the pastor of the college of the church I attended in college sexually assaulted me in his office in the church. And so I had learned from the first time, nobody's going to believe me, so I didn't tell anyone. Each of those times, I said, can't we do better than this? And so I say to Trump, it's not about making America great again. We can do better than this. We must do better than this. Someone said to me recently, it's amazing that after you experience sexual assault from a minister, that you chose to go into the ministry. But it's because I know our capacity to do better. But we have to band together, and when we get weary and tired, as it is the case when geese fly in formation, there might be one at the front who's breaking that initial air, and then that one goes to the back for some rest. And I know we're all weary. Some of us have been doing this work for so long. I'm not a screamer. And we have to do the rotation and keep the air moving, because ain't no stopping us now. We can do better. Not only do our lives depend on it, but the lives of the generations to come. So here's the thing. I believe in strategy. And one of the strategies that is critical in our work is spirit. See, it's like this. Often we say speaking truth to power. I rather say speaking power to lies. We have the power. It's in our numbers, not only here, not only the 300 gatherings across the country, but the hundreds of millions of people who keep saying, we can do better than this. And so I ask if you will join me and pray and keep your heads up. Look around this crowd as much as you can and see the awesome sizes and shapes and colors and genders of God. God of light and love, God of justice, God of purpose. Be with us, strengthen us as we grow weary. Help us to fly and fight and move on still. Help us to take the country back, because we can do better than this. Amen.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Real quick, I want to make sure you all heard this. Did you all hear Senator John Kyle from Arizona today? He was being asked by constituents about his intended vote on this nomination. He said, "Can you please leave me alone?" What's our answer to that? What are we going to do? We're going to leave him alone? Our voices, our our singing, our bodies will continue to be alongside these senators every day of this nomination fight. And with that, we are going to close out in song. I would like to invite to the stage the amazing individuals from Song Rise DC to lead us in a song I want you to remember. Because when you come back and volunteer tomorrow, this weekend, as long as it takes, remember this song.
Well, it looks like it might be a hard road, but I'm gonna walk it with you. And I know you might have a heavy load, but I can carry some too. I will lift you up when they push you down. I will raise my voice and stand my ground. Well, it looks like it might be a hard road, but I'm gonna walk it with you. Well, it looks like it might be a long night, but I ain't going nowhere. And I know it's gonna be a hard fight, but I will stay right here. I will shine a light in the darkest hour. I will face the man in the tallest tower. Well, it looks like it might be a long night. You know I ain't going nowhere. I will work. I will fight. I will strive in the name of love. I will speak. I will shout. I will sing it to the skies above. Well, it's gonna be a perilous climb, but I will follow your lead. And I know it's gonna be a long time until the last one of us is free. But I will hold on tight, stay by your side. I will be with you for this whole damn ride. Well, it looks like it might be a heartless climb, but I will follow your lead. I'm gonna might be a hard road, but I'm gonna walk it with you. And I know it might have a heavy load, but I can carry some too. I will lift you up when they push you down. I will raise my voice and stand my ground. Well, it looks like it might be a hard road, but I'm gonna walk it with you. I will walk, I will climb, shine my light the whole night through. Because it looks like it might be a hard road, but I'm gonna walk it with you. That's right. Oh, I'm gonna walk it with you. I'm gonna walk it with you. I'm gonna walk it with you.
Thanks, everybody. We're Song Rise. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having us.
Thank you all. Have a safe night. I hope to see all of you tomorrow at 12:30 for the march from 333 Constitution Avenue Northwest, where Judge Kavanaugh currently sits. We're going to march from 333 Constitution Avenue Northwest at 12:30 p.m. to right here. Tomorrow, 12:30. Thank you all. Stay in this fight.
So either you go with the more extreme march that probably has the rest and that kind of thing, or you go with the celebrities that have the higher profile. Nice. Alright. So there's nothing else. Do you want to do a little summary for you? Alright. Let's put the SCOTUS behind us. So, alright. All 14 people who watched the whole thing. Yeah, so yeah, I noticed that we had as many as 100 people watching at once, but